what you're looking at here is if you believe that we're moving to a world that's more information-based, and the countries that are going to dominate are the countries that are going to be able to build technology-based businesses and new billion-dollar businesses. You want to begin with some sort of comparative advantage in those emerging industries. And what this graph is showing, which is UN data, is that of the 25 areas that Australia has comparative advantage relative to the world, 24 of them are commodities based, and the 25th one is alcohol and beverages.
How about the innovation issue?
Yeah, so this came from a government innovation report, and what this is showing is what proportion, the proportion of different types of innovators by firm size, and there's different things. So new to market international innovator is a company that develops an entirely new product and takes it to market globally, right? The next one is new to market domestic. Develop a new product, only take it to market in Australia. International modifiers are people that basically take international ideas and do an Australian version, copycat. Domestic modifier is modify an existing business and build a derivative or a similar business. And what you can see here is that there's virtually no, like almost zero, new to market internationally, and even a very small number of new to market domestically innovations. I look at this and maybe the term is harsh, but to be brutally honest, when I saw this data, I said, man, Australia is a bunch of copycats. That's what we do. We take international ideas and do the Australian version of that. And to me, and that was the whole genesis, I'll stop here. The genesis was, what's wrong with this picture? There's so many bright, talented Australians. We've got the CRCs, we've got a great university infrastructure. Some of the most pervasive inventions have come out of Australia that are used globally. But the problem is, I think that innovation is really misunderstood. Innovation is the creativity and invention, and it's the commercialization. And that commercialization piece is completely absent. The ecosystem's broken. You guys know it. You've tried to raise money. It's broken. And that's what we need to fix.
Ron, 6 startups. In your interview with the Minister for Innovation, when he said, why do you want to be a public servant? You said, it's a sacrifice I'm willing to make to do the job.
No, I didn't exactly say that. No. What I actually said was, I never said I wanted to be a public servant. Okay, so what Adrian and Mick just said pretty much answers the question you asked. So why would I get involved with the government? Because we've got a problem to fix. And I like living in Australia. So the two options to solve the problem: leave and go somewhere where it's not as broken, or think about how you can fix it. So I tried to fix it by raising a fund. My timing wasn't very good on that. And even if I had raised a fund, or closed the fund, because I did raise it, even if I had closed the fund, that wouldn't solve the problem, because the problem is systemic and it's cultural. And one fund, and Larry can talk to this better than I can now, but one fund does not fix that. One fund can try to succeed despite that, but really what we all want, and what we all really want, is to get that systemic problem addressed, so that the valley of death that Larry was talking about, where you've got this sort of preponderance of capital sitting in the hands of people that don't know where to put it, on one side, and you've got a lot of money going into creating intellectual property on the other side, but a lack of realization in terms of what it takes to convert that intellectual property back into money, which is the commercialization piece, which is what innovation really is. Innovation is not invention. There are two different words because there's two different meanings. Invention plus commercialization equals innovation. And what we need to understand culturally as a society is that commercialization piece is not important, it's essential. And it shouldn't be the poor cousin, it's in fact the rich cousin. Because if you talk to any multinational corporation that has perfected product development and marketing they will tell you that for every dollar they spend on R&D, there's $100 behind that product becoming successful in the marketplace.
Great point.
It's 100 to 1, the other way. And we've got it 100 to 1 the wrong way. Right? We're assuming that if we pump it into R&D, it's going to come out as products in the marketplace, and it's just not going to happen that way. So that's the problem we have to address. So that's the long answer. The short answer is, so by getting involved with government, and we can talk about CA when you're ready, but by getting involved with government, there are things that the government is good at, and there's a whole bunch of things government's no good at. So the reason I got involved was to try, as best I could, as one person, which is limited in its capacity, I admit, to get focus on the things that government could be really good at that would help, as distinct from doing a whole bunch of stuff that isn't going to help.
Yeah, so risk capital is really at all stages. So it's angel investing. So Ron Conway, for example, is invested in my business, Makana. And back to the earlier discussion, is connections. It's a lot of value add. And then you move through to the VC, and it's all of the things we talked about before in terms of not only access to people, but discipline and structure and help accelerating the business. Then you move to private equity or LBO, and there's been some late stage investing here from people like Andreessen Horowitz and DST, which I'm not convinced is long-term viable as much as an aberration in the market, but there's sophisticated capital at that end, and then right through to NASDAQ. I don't think Silicon Valley would exist in the way it does today had NASDAQ not have broken off from the New York Stock Exchange. That gives a mechanism for investors to get liquidity and get their money back. In Australia, that doesn't exist. You kind of, yes, there are some angel networks forming, which is great. VC, we've talked about, is on the brink of collapse. Private equity, there's Macquarie Bank, and they do a fine job. But even at the ASX level, there's not the analyst infrastructure to help the retail investor really assess risk, which translates to lower trading volumes, which translates to lower liquidity, which makes the ASX not as an attractive option for listing a company.
And positive aggregate returns is your other one.
Yeah, so positive aggregate returns is huge, right? So the Silicon Valley 150, the leading 150 companies, the market cap, this is just the 150 companies. In Silicon Valley, 2.2 million people, the geographic area is no bigger than Greater Sydney, is $1.55 trillion. The whole ASX market cap is 1.4 trillion, of which 70% of that is commodities based. So you have to, it's not, I know when I look at the media in Australia, there's a huge celebration for a $30 or a $40 million deal. And it just doesn't provide the positive aggregate returns for the market overall.
How about on the venture side?
On the venture side for
positive aggregate returns.
So if you look at the US, for example, I mean, because of all the ecosystem conditions here, you've got venture firms, and I know these are exceptional returns, but you know, you look at someone like a Benchmark that invested in eBay and turned millions of dollars into, you know, north of $5 billion. So it's this positive spiral where the best firms are able to provide the sorts of returns, positive in aggregate, that attract LPs. And the thing that, one of the reasons for writing this book that really frankly pissed me off was when I was meeting Australian LPs that were coming over here and talking to them, what are you doing? We're here to invest in US-based venture firms. Why? Because we can't get the return domestically. And I know it's free market capital is going to go to the place that provides it the best return, but something's wrong with that picture if all the LPs and pension funds and future funds are all hopping on aeroplanes to come over here and invest in US-based VCs. Okay, so take one entrepreneur, right, that started Zip2, that was acquired by Lycos, $300 million. Same guy goes on to start PayPal, sold for $1.5 billion. Same guy goes on to start Tesla, electric car company, market cap $3.5 billion. Same guy starts SpaceX, that's putting private payloads into space, that just landed in the last 12 months a $1 billion contract from NASA. and is a primary financier in Solar City, one of the big financial solar installers. The guy's 40 years old, 40. So you have this phenomenon here where people don't check out the ecosystem when they achieve a lot of success. They give back, and they give back in many ways. They give time on board, advisory board, they invest money back, but it's this pay it forward culture. And in Australia, we're starting to see some repeat entrepreneurs, but we need to see more. And when people do achieve success, they can't check out. You can't go sit on a beach. There's an obligation, I think, to give back.
I think it's the case. I tend to look at it as the culture. The culture within Australia is different to the culture here in the entrepreneurial space. I'm fortunate to have an American working for me. He's gone through the commercialisation process here and also in Australia. And I asked him, well, what's the difference between Australia and the US? And he says entrepreneurship and commercialisation and wanting to get out there and do it is part of the DNA here. It's just part of the culture. It's just embedded in them from day one. So any money that goes into research here, and there's a lot of money that goes into research here and filters down the process, it comes out and there's a group of, you know, the whole nation is really up and ready to go and pick up the ideas and run with them. In Australia, that's not the case. We've got to try and change the culture so that, you know, people can get up and they can have a go, they can do things, and it doesn't matter if they fail.